So for this challenge, we're going to take what we've learned about loops and repetition and make our quadratic formula program, our quadratic equation solver, a little more robust. So we're going to, again, we're in the variables project because we're just building on the one from before. Run Java. And give this a second to run. Okay. So it's going to tell us we're going to calculate the solutions, consider the quadratic function, here's what the discriminant is, here's what the solutions are given by. So what we can type here is, I can just start typing some text. And before we learned about loops, this would actually crash my program. But now, it's smart enough to realize, hey, you didn't enter a number, try again. And it's going to ask me, and I can just keep typing whatever I want, and it's going to recognize, hey, that's not a number, until I finally give it a number. And then it moves on to B, and even B is doing the same thing. So B is going to wait for a number. And C is the same way until I finally give it a number and it calculates the results for me. I've also added a line here to just report what I chose, because there could be a lot of text in here and I might have forgotten what I chose. So this is kind of showing that you can use a loop or maybe multiple loops to be more robust in your solution. So before I turn you loose on it though, I'm going to actually show you kind of how you might get started on one of these loops, because it does require a little bit more than we've seen before. I'm just going to walk you through that. So line 40, we've got the scanner. Line 55, we're closing the scanner. Line 54, we're printing the numbers. And nothing especially new or interesting there. It's in these lines that you want to pay a little bit more attention. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called number to hold our value. So this is the variable that's going to hold our final result. And we're going to start it off with this special value called double.nan. And that's usually pronounced nan, and it just means not a number. And the reason we're going to use that special number is because in Java, you have this little method here you can call called double.isNan, and then you can give it a number. And so this can check and say, okay, is the number not a number? And it's a do while loop because we want to run this code at least once, right? We don't know that the users are going to fail immediately, but we don't know they're going to succeed immediately. No matter what, we want the code to run once to get some data. So we print out, hey, give me a number. And then this is probably the trickiest part. This is not the best way to handle this. There are slightly better ways to handle this. But for what we've learned and what we've seen so far, this is kind of our best attempt at this right now. And so you're just going to write try with some curly braces, and you're going to have a line in here to get the next double. Then after the curly brace, you've got a catch with a condition in here. So this is kind of like a backwards if-else. It's very similar to that. Inside the catch, we'll just have a line say, hey, that wasn't right. And then we just have a line where the scanner gets the next line. So this is one attempt. This is me saying, hey, scanner, try to get the next number, but if you fail, clear out the line you just tried to get. So this is a little bit more than we've seen, but it's nothing that's going to be super pressing. When you go to implement the challenge solution, you are almost definitely going to need this. Otherwise, you will crash every time you enter in some bad data. If you don't have this try-catch structure, you will definitely get a crash. If you don't have the dot next line in the catch, then you run the risk of getting kind of an infinite loop and getting your text printed out a billion times and never ending. So that's what's happening here. So here's what happens now. If the catch fails, number actually keeps its old value. So if this line fails, then number stays not a number and the condition fails. if this line succeeds and the user actually typed in a number, then number gets updated to its new value, and now the check fails. So to kind of show you that, we're going to just run this code just to see. It says enter a number, and I can say text. That wasn't a number, try again. And I'll enter in a number this time just so we see it. And now we'll do this with a breakpoint so that we can actually watch what happens. So we'll just debug this real quick. So the first thing that happens is number gets its value. Okay, we'll step over. It asks for input. Oh, there it is asking me for input. And I'll actually give it a value here. We gotta step over first so it can wait for our input. So I typed in text, and I'll press enter. Okay, so there was an error. So that's what this E is. This E is some kind of error. So we're gonna print, hey, there was a mistake. I'm gonna clear out the scanner. And now notice number is still not a number because our check, our attempt to pull out a number failed. So it says, okay, it is not a number. So that means I need to try again. It's going to ask me to enter a number again. It's going to get data from me again. And I'll just go ahead and give it one more bad piece of data. Notice it failed again. Cleared out the scanner. Number is still not a number. So we run again. And this time I'm going to give it an actual value, 3.14. Okay, let's see what happened. Catch the exception. It looks like there was no exception to catch. And my number is actually a number now. So my condition is going to fail. So I don't run the loop anymore. It's going to print out the number and then close the scanner. And that's going to end the program. So we'll end the program there. So this is a good prototypical kind of loop here. In fact, this whole block of code here, line 43 through line 53, is what you will is an example of what you'll often hear referred to as an input validation loop, because it is a loop in which we get some input from the user and we validate it. So it is an input validation loop because we're getting input for the user and we're making sure it's good data before we move on. So this is kind of a skeleton for your do while loops for your quadratic formula solver, quadratic equation solver, your quadratic formula project. And so this is kind of where you'll want to start when planning out, okay, how do we get this to work? And this is going to be probably a little bit trickier project because it does require this try-catch concept that we haven't really seen before. If you can get it to work for right now, that's going to be enough for this. It's not necessary for you to understand how a try-catch works just yet. Just know that the code in the try part is the program attempting to run the code. So we are attempting to get the next double. And if it succeeds, great, it just runs like normal. But if it fails, the catch block is there to say, hey, you tried to do something you can't do, let me clean it up for you. That's kind of the long and short of it, but we can look at in a future video a little bit more with exceptions and how to deal with them and this try-catch block. But the big things here are really knowing this nan and checking nan and then being able to get that number out. So if you have input validation loops like this one in your project, you should be in a pretty good position for the challenge.